You ever walk into a room and feel the mood shift before anyone says a word? That's exactly what happened to me the night of my brother-in-law's birthday dinner. I stepped into the living room and every conversation died. Smiles turned tight. Even Rebecca, my wife, seemed off. Then came the whispers, glances, awkward silences. And finally, one of Rebecca's aunts leaned in and asked, "Is everything okay at home? Michael, Vivian's been concerned?" Vivian, my mother-in-law. Turns out she'd been telling the entire family that I was emotionally abusive, that I yelled at Rebecca, that I scared our daughter, that behind closed doors I was a completely different person. But here's the thing, none of it was true. Not a word. I'm a fourth grade teacher. Calm, patient. I've never raised my voice in that house. I felt blindsided, hurt. But most of all, I felt like I was drowning in someone else's lies. What would you do if your own mother-in-law tried to destroy your reputation? Me, I didn't scream. I didn't fight back. I just installed a few cameras, and then I let the truth do the talking. Stick around, because what those cameras captured changed everything. My name is Michael Donovan. I'm 38 years old, and I teach fourth grade at a public elementary school here in Minneapolis. I've always loved my job. I get to show up every morning and help kids grow, not just in math or reading, but in kindness, empathy, patience. The same values I try to live by at home. My wife Rebecca works from home as a freelance interior designer. We met through mutual friends at a small art gallery opening 10 years ago. From the moment we started talking, I knew she was the one. We got married 2 years later, and a few years after that, our daughter Lily was born. She's 6 now, and she's the brightest, kindest little soul I've ever met. Our life wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. Peaceful. We had our routines: homemade, dinners, bedtime stories, Saturday walks to the park. But there was always Vivian. My mother-in-law has never liked me. Not in an obvious confrontational way. She's smarter than that. Her disapproval came in the form of questions laced with condescension. Still teaching the same grade, Michael. Do you ever think about doing something more ambitious? Rebecca could have married someone in her league, but I guess love makes us blind. She never yelled. She never outright insulted me. But every time she visited, I felt like I had to prove myself, prove that I was enough. At first, I brushed it off. She's old-fashioned, controlling. Maybe she didn't realize how cutting her words were. Rebecca often smoothed things over, saying, "That's just how she is." So I kept the peace for years. But lately, I'd started noticing something strange. Family members, cousins, uncles, even Rebecca's dad began acting cold toward me. Conversations felt stilted, like they were all tiptoeing around some invisible line. And then Lily started acting differently after her grandma's visits. She became more hesitant around me. Sometimes when I asked her to do something simple like clean up her toys, she glanced toward her bedroom door as if checking to see if someone was watching. The final push came when Rebecca's cousin whispered to her during a family barbecue, "Hey, I'm worried your mom told us Michael's been losing his temper, that he's scary when no one's around." That broke me because I knew Vivian had crossed a line. She wasn't just judging me anymore. She was rewriting me, telling a story where I was the villain and people were believing her. I remember Rebecca sitting across from me on the couch that night, tears in her eyes, saying, "I don't know what's going on, but I believe you." That's when I knew we needed proof. So we placed a few discreet security cameras around the house. Nothing intrusive, just the main living room, Lily's play area, and the kitchen. We told ourselves it was just to get clarity, just to understand. But deep down, I already knew Vivian wasn't just stirring up drama. She was building a case against me, one whisper at a time. The first week after we installed the cameras, I didn't expect much. A part of me even hoped I was wrong. Maybe it was all just a big misunderstanding, a series of miscommunications that had somehow spiraled out of control. But the footage didn't lie. Vivian came over one afternoon to help with Lily while Rebecca was finishing up a design project in the basement. I was making a snack for Lily in the kitchen when I heard my name. I paused and turned up the audio on the camera feed later that night. "Vivian, sweetheart, what did Daddy do when you spilled the juice yesterday?" Lily, "Nothing, he just wiped it up." Vivian, "But didn't he look mad? Didn't he sigh real loud?" Lily, Maybe." Vivian, "See, that's not how Daddy should make you feel. If you ever feel scared, you tell Grandma." Okay, my stomach dropped. She wasn't just making things up to adults. She was coaching our daughter to see me in a certain light, planting ideas, reshaping innocent moments into something darker. A few days later, it escalated. Another clip, Vivian intentionally knocked over a cup of water on the coffee table. When I came in and asked what happened, she raised her voice just slightly enough for the microphone to catch Vivian. "Oh, are you going to yell now, Michael? You always get so upset over the smallest things." I hadn't even spoken yet. I stood there blinking. Confused, calm, I told her it wasn't a big deal, grabbed a towel and cleaned it up. Watching the playback, it was surreal, like she was trying to bait me as if she wanted to get something on tape. Some outburst, some crack in my patience to justify the story she was telling behind my back. She wasn't just manipulative, she was deliberate. I showed the footage to Rebecca. She watched it all silently, her face blank. When it ended, she said one word: unbelievable. We went through more clips together. Every time Vivian visited, there was something subtle: jabs, passive-aggressive, digs moments where she'd corner Lily into uncomfortable conversations, always implying that I was unpredictable, unkind, untrustworthy. And every time the footage showed the opposite, me kneeling down to Lily's level, speaking gently, me laughing with her, me biting my tongue when Vivian said something cruel in passing. There was one moment that gutted me. Vivian had taken Lily aside and whispered, "I know it's hard when your daddy gets angry, but it's okay to talk about it. Sometimes mommies have to make hard choices to keep their little girls safe." Lily looked up and said, "But daddy's never scary," Vivian replied. "Not yet." That night, Rebecca broke down. She kept saying, "I didn't know it was this bad. I didn't know she was putting words in our daughter's mouth." For me, the fear wasn't just about my name being dragged through the mud. It was the fear of losing the trust of my own child. Because once that's gone, once someone poisons that well, it's nearly impossible to clean. We considered confronting Vivian directly, telling her we knew, but that felt reactive, emotional, too easy to twist. So I said, what if we don't confront her at all? Rebecca looked at me confused, and I said, what if we confront the lie with the truth? That's when we started making a list: every person Vivian had spoken to about me, every family member who'd suddenly grown cold, distant, or suspicious, and one by one we invited them over, not for a confrontation, but for a screening. The first person we invited over was Rebecca's younger brother, Jonah. He'd been cold to me lately, avoiding eye contact, never responding to texts. Rebecca told him we wanted to clear the air about something Vivian had said. He showed up looking wary, arms crossed, ready for a fight. We didn't argue, we just hit play. The living room went silent as the first clip rolled. There was Vivian crouched beside Lily, whispering suggestive questions. Me in the background, calmly pouring juice. Vivian coaxing Lily to say she was afraid, Lily looking confused, then guilty. Clip after clip, Vivian baiting me, pushing me, accusing me of being angry when I hadn't even raised my voice. Telling Lily her mother might need to make hard choices. Twisting things subtly, carefully, always with that sweet, grandmotherly voice. Jonah didn't speak for a full minute after the last clip ended. Then he said quietly, "She's been telling everyone you've been losing it. That Rebecca's afraid to say anything. That Lily cries when you're alone with her." Rebecca's face tightened. "And did you believe her?" Jonah didn't answer. But the shame on his face was loud enough. Over the next 2 weeks, we invited more family members. Rebecca's aunt, her cousins, even her father, who had once called me personally and asked if we were having problems at home. Each visit was the same: silence, shock, and then disbelief, not in me, but in Vivian. The final visit was with Rebecca's dad. He sat stiffly on our couch as we played the same batch of videos. And when it was over, he looked straight at me and said, "I had no idea, I'm sorry. Michael, I judged you without even asking." That moment felt like something cracked open inside me, like I'd been holding my breath for months without realizing it. But not everyone was willing to accept the truth right away. When we finally invited Vivian over, she arrived smiling, dressed like she always did in her pastel sweaters and pearls. She greeted Lily with sugary sweetness, shot me a polite empty smile and asked, "So what's the occasion?" We didn't answer. We just showed her the footage. At first she tried to laugh it off. "Oh, come on, Michael. You really went through all this trouble just because of a few misunderstandings." Then she turned to Rebecca. "Sweetheart, you know how dramatic he can be?" Rebecca didn't blink. "I'm not laughing." Vivian's face changed. That mask so carefully crafted over the years started to slip. The charm turned brittle. Her voice shook, just barely. "I was trying to protect you," she said. "You married a man who teaches kids for a living, Rebecca. You could have had so much more." There it was. The real reason, not fear, not concern, just control. She couldn't stand the fact that her daughter had chosen love over ambition, kindness over wealth, a steady life over a flashy one. And if she couldn't change Rebecca's mind, then she'd try to turn Rebecca against me. But that night, for the first time, Rebecca chose me with no hesitation, no confusion, no guilt. "You don't get to speak to Lily unless we're present," she told her mother. "And until you agree to see a therapist, you won't be allowed to visit without supervision." Vivian stood frozen. She tried to argue, but we didn't budge. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need revenge in the traditional sense. The truth had done what I never could. It exposed her. And from that point forward, there was no going back. In the weeks that followed, Vivian tried to regain control. She sent Rebecca a long email. The subject line read, "Let's not overreact." She didn't deny what the video showed. Instead, she downplayed it. Claimed we had misunderstood her intentions, that she only said those things because she was concerned for Lily, for Rebecca, for our family. She even had the nerve to suggest that I had manipulated the footage, cutting clips out of context. But by then it was too late. The illusion was broken. We didn't respond right away. Rebecca needed time. I did too. We talked a lot during that period, more deeply than we had in years, about trust, about how easy it is for even the strongest relationships to be shaken by quiet lies, and how lucky we were to catch it before real damage was done. When we finally replied to Vivian, it wasn't a debate. We sent her a simple list of boundaries. All visits with Lily would be supervised, no exceptions. She would need to attend family therapy for us to consider lifting that rule. Any future accusations or misrepresentations would result in total estrangement. It was firm, unemotional, and absolutely non-negotiable. She didn't take it well. At first, she threatened to cut us off financially, though we'd never relied on her for a cent. Then she tried guilt. "You're taking my granddaughter away." Rebecca's response was clear and cold. "No, you tried to take her father away. We're protecting her, not punishing you." That was the shift I'd been waiting for. Rebecca had spent years trying to balance her mother's expectations with our marriage. But now she stood fully on the side of truth, no longer afraid to say what needed to be said. We didn't ask anyone else to take sides, but slowly the family began reaching out to us more. Invitations returned. Texts came in. Even Rebecca's aunt sent me a message. "I owe you an apology." I believed her without proof. "I'm sorry, I didn't need them to grovel. I just needed the narrative to be corrected." And most importantly, I needed Lily to grow up in a home where manipulation wasn't tolerated, even if it came in the form of soft words and warm hugs. As for Vivian, she went silent for a while. Weeks passed, then months, then one day a letter arrived. Handwritten, neatly folded. No return address, but we knew who it was from. She apologized, not perfectly, not without excuses. But there was a line that stood out. "Maybe I was wrong to think I knew what was best for my daughter and granddaughter. Maybe I let my pride turn into poison." We didn't respond right away. Instead, Rebecca and I took that letter to the therapist we'd started seeing as a couple, not because our marriage was in trouble, but because we wanted to protect it. With guidance, we agreed to allow limited visits, always supervised, always on our terms. Vivian agreed. It was a long, slow road, and things would never be what they once were. But that wasn't a bad thing, because now everything was built on truth. Not performance, not pressure, and certainly not fear. I never raised my voice. I never fought fire with fire. All I did was hit record and let the silence between the lies speak louder than any confrontation ever could. 3 months after the truth came out, our home felt different. Not just safer, not just quieter, more honest. There was a time when I'd walk through the front door after work and feel a tension I couldn't explain. A weight in the air, like I was constantly being watched or judged by someone who didn't even live there full time. That weight was gone. Lily ran to hug me when I came home the way she used to before Vivian's whisper campaign began. She laughed more freely, spoke more openly. There was a lightness in her that I hadn't realized we were in danger of losing Rebecca, and I found our rhythm again too. Our conversations no longer tiptoed around her mother. We no longer walked on eggshells or prepped each other before family gatherings. We were just ourselves, and that to me was the real victory. Vivian did eventually come to a supervised visit. It was quiet, no drama, no tears. She brought a puzzle for Lily and sat across the table watching her carefully. She barely looked at me, and when she did, it was brief, hollow-eyed, like someone still trying to figure out how she lost control. There was no apology that day, no grand gesture of remorse, just a woman who'd burned her bridge and was now carefully trying to rebuild it stone by stone. And I let her not because I trusted her, but because I wanted Lily to grow up knowing the difference between grace and gullibility, between forgiveness and forgetting. And because setting boundaries isn't about revenge, it's about teaching people how to treat you and showing your children how to stand their ground without becoming bitter. Later that evening after Vivian left, Rebecca sat beside me on the couch. She took my hand and said, "You saved us." I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a man who had nearly lost everything because he underestimated just how far someone could go with a smile and a story. I still think about that first moment, the birthday dinner, the shift in the room, the way everyone looked at me like they'd already decided who I was, and how close I came to exploding, to yelling, to giving Vivian exactly what she wanted, but I didn't. And in the end, it wasn't a fight that cleared my name. It was patience, documentation strategy, and the quiet power of letting people see the truth for themselves. Lily asked me one night after we finished reading her bedtime story, "Daddy, why doesn't Grandma come over as much?" I paused, thought carefully, and said, "Because sometimes even people who love us need to take time to learn how to be better." She nodded, satisfied with that, then added, "You're the best daddy." That was all I needed. No public takedown, no shouting match, just my daughter's trust, my wife's belief in me, in a home that was finally fully ours again. Looking back now, I realize how fragile a reputation can be. It doesn't take much, just a few whispered lies, a handful of suspicious glances, and suddenly the people you thought were on your side start seeing you through a distorted lens. What scared me the most wasn't Vivian's manipulation. It was how easy it was for her to convince others, how quickly people accepted the worst version of me without asking questions. No bruises, no outbursts, just a quiet suggestion repeated enough times until it felt like truth. I'm not perfect, I have my moments like anyone else, but I know who I am. I know the kind of father I strive to be, the kind of husband I work hard to become every single day. And the most important thing I've learned through all this, never rely on character alone to defend you. Document, stay calm, set boundaries, let the facts do what your words never could. Because if I had shouted back, if I'd stormed into a room and demanded they believe me, I might have proved her point. Instead, I let the silence speak. I let the camera roll, and I let the truth reveal itself frame by frame. Today, Vivian is still in our lives, but on our terms. She's attending therapy, slowly rebuilding her relationship with Lily under close watch. And for the first time, Rebecca and I are parenting as a united front without fear of outside interference. There's peace in our home now, not the fragile kind you tiptoe around. The earned kind, the kind that comes when you stand up for yourself with clarity, not chaos. If you ever find yourself the target of quiet sabotage, ask yourself, are you trying to win the argument or win the war? Because sometimes the smartest revenge isn't loud, it's documented, controlled, and undeniable. What would you do if your mother-in-law told everyone you were dangerous without proof? Would you fight back or press record? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit like if you believe in defending yourself with truth. Subscribe for more stories where justice finds its way quietly but completely.